All right, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the latest episode of the Eurosnob Podcast. My name is Alex John, and we've got a special treat today because we've got both Ian and Zach joining me today. Ian, first of all, how you doing, buddy? Long time no talk.
Yeah, right, man. I'm hanging in there, keeping busy. Little guy just turned 1 a couple weeks ago, so he's starting to run around the house. So no more couch time for me,
Absolutely. And Zach, I know you've got one little one and then a new one that just arrived recently as well, so I'm sure that's keeping you on your toes.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was like to be my own person anymore.
I can't even imagine the second one, dude. I mean, I'm sitting here with one, and it's like, holy shit. You said you had another one. I was like, man.
I have zero private life, like, at all.
Do you even sleep? That's the more important question.
Fortunately, my wife is a very good mother, and she gets up most of the night with the baby.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate in that sense. But if she's getting real bad, of course, I get woke up. And I don't know. You know how it is with a newborn. It's not great.
Meanwhile, I'm just sitting here just doing my thing, and I'm like, maybe that's a discussion for me for maybe next year. But speaking of sleep, I wish I could have slept through the Europa League final. I know that the last time we were on, we were talking, previewing that Arsenal-Chelsea game and how we thought that was going to unfold, and I think we all felt relatively okay about at least the team and how we might set up and the tactics and all that. But lo and behold, it didn't go our way. Chelsea 4, Arsenal 1. Very disappointing day in Baku. I mean, realistically, it didn't even feel like a big occasion when the game started, just due to all the external circumstances. And I feel like that carried over to the game itself. I mean, I'll throw this to you guys. Did that game just seem lifeless to you even from the beginning, even when it was 0-0 and Arsenal were still competitive?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I never really felt like we were in the game. It kind of, I don't know, from the start for me, it felt like it was going to be one of those Chelsea games. So, I mean, I can't say I'm super surprised.
I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't surprised with the scoreline. For some reason, I did feel kind of confident going into it. I don't know why. It's not like we gave any sort of, sense that we could actually play a game just based on our form leading up to it. But I was, for some reason, I had a kind of a strange feeling that we might turn up and do all right. Maybe that's more because Chelsea isn't really all that impressive. But apparently I was wrong. I really only saw the first half because by the time I got home, I drove home from work during halftime, pulled in my driveway, saw the score. We were down 2-0, didn't even bother turning the game on. I thought we were okay in the first half. I mean, I certainly didn't think it would. I wasn't expecting to be down 2-0 by the time I got home. I thought we created some chances. I thought we lacked that bit of quality in the final third. I mean, the one play in particular that comes to mind was where I believe it was Xhaka played Kolasinac down the left side of the box, and a first-time cross gets to the middle and probably ends up in the goal, but he just doesn't have the technical ability to play the ball first time right there. He had to take a touch, settle it down, and I believe it was Azpilicueta got across and blocked it out for a corner. That's kind of really what I thought stuck out to me in the first half. Like I said, we created some chances, but just quality in the final third, we couldn't get it done. And really, I kind of thought by the end of the first half that we did miss out on those chances and it would come back to bite us in the ass in the end. But,
Well, is it just me, or did it kind of feel like we were never really going to create any real chances outside of Kolasinac slinging them in from the wide area? I mean, we were never really going to, I don't know, send either one of Lacazette or Aubameyang through. Mesut Ozil was nowhere. I mean, it never really felt like we were going to actually score to me.
Yeah, no, I definitely got that impression with that. I mean, it's kind of, we were single-minded in attack. Everything was down the flanks, whether it was to Kolasinac or Maitland-Niles on the right side.
It does feel like our entire offensive strategy basically relies on creating overlaps with our wingbacks and then either trying to play the cutback or trying to play square across the goal. And aside from that, yeah, we didn't create anything through midfield, And I think some of that was probably partially based on the tactics put into place, because I do think Ozil was sent out there to kind of man mark Jorginho to some extent. And I think I saw a thread on Twitter after the fact that kind of explained his positioning. But I think that also eliminated him from getting into positions where he could be dangerous. I mean, he really didn't create much from open play. And Ian, I'm glad you brought up that Kolasinac chance, because we'll definitely get into him later as just in terms of his future at the club. But if you see a screenshot of exactly what was available to him at that time, if he hit it first time, both Lacazette and Aubameyang were in terrific spots for an easy tap in. And it is, like you said, just that lack of confidence in his own ability. And I mean, his passing rate at one point in the first half was 43% or something to that extent. I mean, it was just abysmal. So it felt like we couldn't really control possession through midfield, but at the same time, we were sort of able to create these opportunities on the wings. But it also didn't feel to me like Chelsea felt like they had to get out of first gear. I don't feel like at any point they really upped the tempo or anything. I think they kind of felt like they could control the game and the tempo. And then, eventually we would tire out, because I feel like in the second half, Ozil's form, not his form, but kind of, his positioning suffered a little bit. And, they were able to get overlaps from their fullbacks, and Hazard really started to take the game over.
On mute. A little bit rusty, boys.
Yeah. It's been a while since you've been on here.
Yeah, I was wondering why you were staring at me blankly. I was like, oh, shit.
That's what my wife tells me all the time, though.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, there was the few chances that Chelsea did kind of, when they did generate chances in the first half, they really didn't have to work too hard at it. It seemed like they were just kind of absorbing what we were doing, letting us go wide and just clearing everything out the middle. And like I said, when they did actually attack, it seemed like they were pretty successful in creating a chance almost every time they did venture forward. So I don't know. I mean, I think clearly we were outclassed tactically. Again, I didn't see the second half, so I don't know if we made any adjustments or they made adjustments, but just based off what was in the first half, Chelsea certainly seemed to have the better plan right off the get-go.
Yeah, definitely. I think that they really started to get Hazard into open space. And then I think once he gets in open space, he's drawing multiple defenders towards him. That allows other players to get crosses in and to find space. And that's sort of what happened for the Giroud opening goal, where he kind of got the run on Koscielny and was able to get a pretty easy header to Czech's near post, where most goals go. For whatever reason. But to be fair to Czech, I'm not sure how much he could have done about that. But then once they got that first goal, Zach, I don't know about you, but I thought it was pretty much over at that point. I had no confidence in us being able to kind of assert any sort of comeback.
No, neither did I. I mean, heads dropped. The entire team's heads dropped after that. It's like they were defeated at that point. It wasn't until we brought on Iwobi and I mean, I don't want to say Guendouzi, he did okay, but Iwobi and Willock before we even really started, like we were trying to come back. It was just, I don't know, it was a really weird atmosphere. I don't know.
Yeah, it felt weird because the crowd wasn't into it, because, I mean, you probably heard ad nauseum the issues with fans trying to get there. So
not to mention the fact that they only allotted 6,000 tickets to Arsenal fans?
Yeah, 6,000 for each group, and I think Chelsea returned more than half of theirs. Which, I mean, it was just a clusterfuck. For me, it felt like we were watching an ICC game. Those preseason games that mean absolutely nothing. So there's just a bunch of empty seats, and the atmosphere is pretty casual. And I feel like I don't know if that played a part at all, but just the atmosphere was so flat, and I feel like the team was flat for most of the game.
Did you guys see any articles that people wearing Mkhitaryan jerseys were getting stopped by Azerbaijani police?
Yeah,
I mean, that the whole situation was just a mess.
I mean, what do you guys think? Could Mkhitaryan have made a difference in that game?
I don't think so. I mean,
The midfielder. when we weren't creating anything in open play, he is someone who scored against Chelsea in the second game of the season. To only have Joe Willock and Ketia and Iwobi as your attacking subs off the bench it is a real detriment. Again, I don't think it would have changed the outcome, but I also think there's a scenario where Mkhitaryan might have played instead of Ozil because of his ability. No, obviously, but this is something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I've never been impressed with him. Not since he was at Dortmund. So I don't know. Maybe it's just my bias and the fact that I've never been a fan of him, really. I don't think he would have made too much of an impact. He's, all too often he drifts out of games and doesn't really. I kind of like our entire squad, really.
Yeah,
that's true. That's also the Arsenal story, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty
speaking
much.
of drifting out, I mean, Ozil, you hear the comments that he was supposedly making about Unai Emery. You think he's gone?
Well, if we can lip read in Turkish, which I can't, but people who claim to basically, I don't know what he said, basically said you're not a coach or something like that. I mean, I don't know how much of that is, kind of putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5, but, it's easy to see, like when he's pulled off the field, and I think it was either Arsblog or Gunnerblog mentioned that him being pulled for Willock is one of the most pointed substitutions that there's been in a long time, because you're taking off your most expensive player for an academy kid in a Europa League final where this is basically your only route into the Champions League. And I mean, Ian, I know you didn't see the whole game, but what was kind of your thought on Ozil? I talked about the tactical part of him trying to man mark Jorginho, but he's just not that kind of player that can pull the same job as Ramsey did in that win at the Emirates when we beat them 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not surprising. I mean, we haven't seen Emery really find a way to use Ozil and to really get the best out of him. So the fact that he was pretty invisible in the first half, that's probably down to, if he was frustrated with his manager, just really not being motivated. And if that is the case, well, there's some deeper issues there. So no, I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, that's, if you go back and listen to any of the podcasts here, I've always been a big time Mesut Ozil supporter, and there's really nothing left to support, at least not based on his form, this season.
He's got a small amount of assists, doesn't he? Like 2 or 3.
Yeah, it was something. It's crazy. I don't remember what the number was, but 2 or 3 sounds right. I mean, even his chances created are, way down from where they have been in the past.
His head's just not in it.
I also think, I mean, it's kind of lost in the fact that he's just turned 30. Like physically, he probably is just not at the level he used to be. I think if you even watch him from the 2015-16 season when he put up crazy assist numbers, his acceleration when he did get the ball, his ability to get into space quickly, that's kind of faded away from his game. And, we all thought that, when we moved to this 3-4-1-2 formation where he's playing behind 2 strikers, that he would just be able to create chances because he wouldn't have the defensive responsibility. And it just hasn't turned out that way. And, for as much as it's been an issue as to how Emery's used him, I also think his physical limitations are coming into play. And I just think he's on the wrong side of his career. I mean, am I reading too much into it?
No, I mean, he's definitely, I think we can actually take this point, since we're moving on already, to kind of close up on that, on the final completely, and kind of start looking forward here, maybe reviewing the season a little bit. But with Ozil, no, I mean, you're right. He's definitely on, as far as athletically, on, the down, starting to come on the downside of his career. He's definitely not as athletic as he was. And you said he's 30, and he's going to start losing that burst. But he's such an intelligent player at finding space and getting the ball in those spaces. But the team just doesn't seem to be tactically set up in a way to utilize that, because, like I said, what is a tactic? You've already mentioned it today, Alex, that we play the ball down the flanks and look for a cut back to the strikers. So, what is his job? We don't tactically try and create anything through him and through his position. Everything is down the flanks. So, when he was 23, even, you go back and look at clips of him, sure, he was running down the flanks, running in behind, running in behind, but he doesn't do that anymore. He just physically can't. And at times it seems like he's not even really willing to make runs like that. So there's definitely more to it than just tactically the team not being set up in a way for him to reach his full potential or to achieve his full potential. There's definitely more going on with him as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can count on one hand the amount of good games he's had this season. And granted, I know first half of the season he wasn't necessarily featuring regularly, but even when he did kind of work his way back into the team when both he and Ramsey came back in, I mean, there was the Leicester game, where he scored a goal and had, I think he had one goal, one assist, and then one other ball that created assist for Bellerin. He really hasn't had many great games, and I think we all keep kind of waiting for this switch to flip on where he just hits this tremendous run of form like he did back 3 seasons ago, and it's just not going to happen at this point. And, and we'll get into this, in just a little bit about his contractual situation, but, Zach, what's kind of your take on, how he performed and, basically what it means for him moving forward?
So I agree with Ars Blog. I mean, it was definitely a message. I mean, it was you and I felt it. I know we were talking about it during the game. It felt very, very, I don't know, end of days for Mesut Ozil. It really doesn't seem like he's bought into it at all. The performance was absolutely lackluster. He didn't really try to get into the game, didn't really try to take advantage of the game. But, I mean, at the same time, you're right. I mean, tactically, we're not even building up or anything to play through him. We have, him as a playmaker, noting physical skills. He can't do it on the wings anymore. I mean, and we just won't play through him. So he's kind of a useless position out there at this point. I don't think he'll play again.
Yeah, I think the traditional number 10 isn't really effective in our system.
It's not really effective in too many systems.
Yeah, true.
I mean, I think one of the things that you're seeing, they talk about this in basketball specifically, where they call it positionless basketball. I think you're starting to see that kind of idea. I guess a better word for it would be more fluidity. I think that kind of is another way to look at it. With as far as in attacking sense, you're starting to see that more and more with teams where you have to be able to be fluid. You have to be able to interchange positions. Your guys in the middle have to be able to drift wide. Strikers drop in, the midfielder making the run ahead of your strikers. I mean, we're so one-dimensional and too rigid in the structure. So, I think I completely lost where I was going with that.
No, I did get
I completely lost where that point was supposed to end up.
No, I get it.
Hopefully I drifted in the right direction.
There's a rigidity in our structure that you don't necessarily see with other teams. I mean, even watch Chelsea. I mean, yes, Hazard's kind of a generational type talent, but, he wouldn't necessarily just stay on the left. He'd pop up in central midfield at times. He'd go to the right. Then you'd have Pedro flashing out left. I mean, that's how they created a lot of their chances, is just the interchange between those two guys. And then their midfield as well. Sometimes Jorginho would be the one to push forward and then Kovacic would sit deep. You didn't really see that with us. You just saw us kind of sticking to our basic principles, which was, Jack and Torreira sitting, Ozil kind of floating, but not really floating anywhere specifically, not really overloading to one side, because usually you used to see Ozil kind of float to the right so he could cut in on his left, or he could feed that right overlap, from the fullback. And you just really didn't see that. And, our strikers, for as good as they aren't players who are going to create chances out of nothing. Lacazette occasionally can do that, but Aubameyang's more of a pure finisher. He's not someone who's necessarily going to dribble past 3 or 4 players and then create a chance out of nothing. He needs service, and Lacazette, to his credit, tried to do that, but he wasn't able to. And I think when those two guys were kind of neutralized, the rest of the team was flat. And again, it goes back to also a mentality issue, and I would love to get your guys' take on this, because sometimes I don't necessarily like discussing mentality, because I think it's hard to quantify intangible factors, like intensity and passion and all of that. But I think in this game it kind of shined through that once that first goal went in, everyone's heads dropped. And I feel like we've seen that at multiple points this season. You know, we saw it even against Crystal Palace or Brighton or, you know, Everton and Newcastle, Leicester and all those games. I mean, is there just a tangible, you know, flaw in this team's mentality?
I mean, I think so. But I mean, people have been saying that about Arsenal for a decade.
You're right. People pin that on Arsene Wenger for the last 4 or 5 seasons. You know, it's that typical Arsenal thing that's always going around, right? It's the same mentality. And we thought with the manager change we might see a difference, but
I mean, I've always said, you know, when I watch games, it's like there's one thing to lose a game trying, and then there's another thing to lose a game the way Arsenal loses a game. It's like just there's those games that we play that we're just not on the same field as the team we're playing against. And the final is just an example of it against Chelsea, who's done it so many times to us.
And the other thing is we had more to play for in this game than they did. They had Champions League secured. So, you know, if they lost, it would have, you know, they never want to lose a final to their rival. But at the same time, they had Champions League secured. This was big for us from getting into the Champions League, budget, transfer, revenue, all that stuff. I mean, this was huge for us. And it just didn't look like that really registered with any of the players.
I mean, no, it certainly hasn't. But when we lost however many games there down the stretch in the Premier League, where had we won 2 of them, we'd have Champions League locked up anyways, regardless of what happened in Europa. I mean, if you're not getting up for those games and you're dropping points in games that you should easily win against teams that also have nothing to play for, why would you turn up in a final?
Especially a final halfway around the world.
Right. And yeah, that's the thing. Like if you can't get up for those games towards the end of the Premier League season, I mean, like I said, you're not going to get up for anything. So yeah, there's absolutely the mentality issue. And it runs so much deeper through this club than I think at least I ever really thought.
Yeah. And I'm kind of like what you said, Ian, about thinking potentially that would change just with a manager change, not necessarily with Emery himself, but just having a fresh set of ideas or a new presence in the dressing room. Maybe some of those inner demons would kind of be exercised to some extent, but you know, I don't know if it's just so ingrained in the club's, you know, culture right now and in the club's mindset that it's hard to work through. And I don't know if it means you need a complete squad overhaul, but then, you know, what if next summer we're having the same discussion where, you know, we bring in 5-6 players this summer and that doesn't necessarily change. And, you know, even under Arsene Wenger, we would overhaul a good chunk of the squad every summer and still have this issue. And I feel like, you know, even players coming into the squad sort of fall prey to that at some point, you know, where they kind of hear this talk about, oh, you know, classic Arsenal, you know, messing up when it matters, and maybe it's something that kind of permeates their mindset.
I mean it comes down to being a leadership thing. I mean, who are the leaders in Pittsburgh? Who are the leaders in our squad right now?
There's gonna be a long pause.
Exactly. I mean, and that's a major problem, is it not? I mean, even look at like.
You'd like to say Socrates. You'd like to say Koscielny.
Sure, but Koscielny's barely been on the field.
And
Socrates,
he's got half a leg when he is on the field.
Exactly. I mean, sure, Torreira, but he's not a leader. He works hard, but he's not a leader.
He doesn't speak English either, so he really can't.
Granted, Xhaka, he's in a position to be a leader. He's worn the armband at times this year, but he's also, you know, at least in my opinion, that, and you know, I don't think he's necessarily. Sure, he gets worked up, but he hasn't even lashed out this year. So, like, sure, they've controlled his discipline, but you don't see that passion, that energy, that intensity that he had when he first got here. I mean, they put the armband on, give Mesut Ozil the armband. Well, you're not going to get intensity there. There's nobody in our team in a position of, in a leadership position that is going to grab the team by the shirt and pull us forward into a game.
Do you think it's got anything to do with what Petr Cech said about there not being enough pressure on the team?
No, because I know we've had this discussion has come up even in the past before Cech said anything. Man, it's a difficult thing because you shouldn't need. I don't think it's a matter of pressure. For me, it's a matter of ambition. It shouldn't matter to a player who's coming behind you. It should ultimately come down to what is your goal? Do you want to win the Premier League? Do you want to win Europa? Do you want to make Champions League? Do you want to be the best player that you could possibly be? And it's all those things that kind of come down that make up, a player's mindset. I think more so than fearing for who's coming behind them, who's trying to take their spot. And clearly, I've always been a defender, and I've always not wanted to criticize that of a professional player, but there is something running through this club that just seems to kill ambition with the players.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm wrong, please, I'd love somebody to explain to me why I'm wrong, but I think it's pretty clear to me.
It's like they come here and lose it.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback off of something Ian said, that you should have that inner ambition, and I completely agree with that, because I don't think you should have to rely on an external motivation to get yourself ready for these types of games. Like, I don't think someone should have to give a fiery locker room speech in order for you to fully grasp the seriousness of this type of game. I think. I would tend to think that a professional athlete, and maybe it's my own naivety with this, but I would tend to think a professional athlete at that level shouldn't need that type of thing to get motivated for this type of game, or just even smaller games. I don't think that a professional athlete should need to be taught, hey, all we got to do is beat Brighton and we're probably in the Champions League, and then still just not show up. I just think there's something running through the culture of this club that's really, like you said earlier, Ian, it's even deeper than we all thought. It isn't just an Arsene Wenger issue. It isn't just one or two players. It's just the whole team. Even Koscielny, I mean, for as much as we love him and he's given us so many great moments, to switch off when that Giroud likes to make that type of run, to switch off, and then all of a sudden that 1 second we're down 1-0. You shouldn't have to be constantly reminded of that. You should know. I don't think this idea that somehow there's more pressure in different dressing rooms should influence how we view what we do in our own dressing room. What Chelsea does is what is their business. I think, Czech was also looking at it from when they had guys like Drogba and Lampard and Essien. That's when he was there during their prime. But, recent Chelsea doesn't have guys like that. They don't have these vocal leaders or anything like that. I mean, certainly not in Sarri's squad. Who would be the leader of that team? David Luiz? I mean,
Azpilicueta, I think.
I guess, but I mean, he's not like that, like those kinds of old school leaders. And I hear this from a lot of Arsenal fans that if we had like a Tony Adams or a Patrick Vieira, that would change things. But
I don't think that's not necessarily the type of player that I'm even really referring to. I think it's different. I mean, sure, back in the day, you had that person that would yell and get in the faces of everybody else on their team. And I think when I said grab their teammates by the neck and pull them into the fight, I didn't mean it kind of from like get in people's faces and yell. But a player like Eden Hazard, for example, right? He's the kind of player that says, that looks at a game, sees that his team needs something, puts his team on his back and creates chances that, that get his team over the edge.
He understands his role as the team superstar.
Exactly. I mean, and you can even go back to like Thierry Henry, for example. And I know I'm taking one of the most talented and one of the greatest players of all time, one of the best goal scorers ever. Like I understand that, but there was something about him that he would do everything in his power to keep Arsenal from losing, right?
Yeah.
If it meant picking the ball up in midfield and trying and beating the entire team to score a goal to get us going, that's what he would do. And there's not a single player in this Arsenal squad that does that. And for me, that's really the biggest problem. That we just don't have that type of player. They're passengers. We don't have any on-field leaders.
I would describe our season as a whole as I would describe El Neni's passing ability.
Sideways and backwards.
Yeah.
Unambitious, neutral.
Yeah, I mean, basically hiding when it matters.
Yeah.
It's funny, though, Ian, you were talking about some...
Still there, bud?
To take us in the next round of the Champions League. And it is quite a striking visual compared to what we saw, where I think Lacazette tries to be that guy at times, but yeah, I mean, there is no one like that. And it was a good point that Hazard really kind of took that game over and basically said, I'm not going to allow this team to lose.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been like Ian said, it's been a long time since we've had any players like that in the squad. And I almost feel like, though, this day and age, those type players are fewer and far between. It's like they're a dying breed. There's not as many. I mean, even think of there are those superstar players at every, quote unquote, big club, but there's not a lot of them out there. It's not like Arsenal can go get one. Even if we were in Champions League, they're not very easily obtained, the player with that kind of mentality. Eden Hazard, I just heard he's going to Real Madrid I saw that today, but, good for him. He's been their guy for better part of a decade.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't want to see us play Eden Hazard ever again. I think he terrified me every time he played. But
as soon as he picks up the ball, I would hate to defend against him.
He just puts so much pressure on defenders. Instantly, he gets the ball and drives at defenders and
puts them on the back foot immediately.
That's the worst feeling. It makes you so uncomfortable as a defender.
Yeah. And he's good with both feet, too. So, he picks the ball up on the left, and then you think he's going to cut in on his right, but then he cuts back on his left and drives towards the byline. And so he's got so much variety to his game, and we just don't have anyone like that. And it was striking in that game. I don't think I've ever seen a more, obvious difference in mentality than in that game. But just kind of transitioning to just our general season thoughts. And Ian, I know you haven't been on in a little while, so I'm definitely curious to hear your thoughts about how the season as a whole unfolded, from where we were. I mean, if you look at it in March, the first week of March, we drew with Tottenham, realistically should have won that game. And then we beat United at home. And I think but a lot of us were feeling pretty good at that point about making the Champions League through one of these routes. But how do you feel about the season as a whole, how it ended? I mean, do you consider it a failure? What's kind of your take on that?
I mean, honestly, the best way to describe the season really was the way that the Europa League final went. I know we're moving on from that, but
yeah.
It's that game alone. That game was just a microcosm of our season. I mean, we have the opportunities to get something done, and we just roll over. It's just a super disappointing season. I mean, I know coming into it, the expectations, at least for me, weren't all that high. But I expected to see some sort of direction being instilled. I expected to see, as the season went on, us getting better. And I didn't really see any of that. I mean, if anything, we're worse off now than we were at the beginning of the year. So it's really disappointing on all fronts. I'm struggling. I'm trying to find something positive to say from it, and
got nothing.
I really got nothing, man. There's no breakthrough performance from a young player. There's no. I mean, Leno looks like he's going to be pretty good for us.
I think Maitland-Niles might be decent on the right wing if he were to get a chance there.
Yeah,
But
but
he's not great going backwards, but I mean he constantly beats people going forward.
but they gotta figure out what they want to do with him. I'm concerned that he's never gonna develop into a good enough player for us because they don't give him
Opportunity.
Yeah, well, they do, but they move him all over the place. He's versatile, so they take advantage of it.
It's the Oxlade-Chamberlain situation where
it really is.
We played Ox at left wing, left wing back, right wing back, central midfield, attacking midfield. And Maitland-Niles is kind of at risk of falling into that. But it's interesting what you said about us getting worse over the course of the season, and I agree with that. I mean, I think at the beginning of the season we were all kind of looking for what Emery's style was. He mentioned in his opening press conference he wanted to be proactive and pressing and all that good stuff, and so we were kind of looking for signs of that and playing out of the back. But if you look over the course of the season, we've actually played out of the back less as the season's gone along. Our pressing game really hasn't been coordinated all season. I think I mentioned this in the last episode, but if you remember the first game against Chelsea, even though we lost, that was actually a game I thought we performed pretty well. And there was one sequence where we basically, played the ball out of the back and it ended up in a Iwobi goal. And that's like everyone was thinking, okay, this is what Emery was looking for. But over the course of the season, you've kind of seen him revert to his more conservative tendencies. And I don't know if it's because of the center back situation, but I tend to think that's just who he is as a manager. I don't think you can significantly change your mindset as a manager just because you've gone to a different club. You still kind of fall back on what you think works. And keep in mind, he's been a manager at clubs like Sevilla and Valencia where he's never overachieved in relation to the budget he has and the talent level he had. He was at PSG, and I don't know how much you can take from that. I mean, they won one League One title and finished second to Monaco another year. So he's just not someone who's going to overachieve based on what he has. And so I haven't seen the progression throughout the season. I'm not even sure what you classify our style as. That's the thing. And people say, well, he adapts to other managers or he adapts to other things. But at some point, you have to have a baseline philosophy you fall back on. You can't just say, well, we're playing Watford this week, so we're going to play 3 at the back, or we're playing Leicester this week, so we're going to play a 4-3-3. You have to at some point have a base philosophy and a base strategy, and I haven't seen that.
And I think the word you're looking for right there is identity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And exactly. Like I said, we do not have an identity.
Well, that's Edu's job now, right?
Apparently. I mean, that's kind of it's going to be I'm not really sure how that dynamic is supposed to work.
Our back room has been so incredibly volatile in the last 18 months, the last 2 years. It's just, there's no stability. There's nobody there stable and long enough to implement that identity. I mean, we had Arsene Wenger's identity forever, but with this new group, it's just been ever changing. It's kind of like changing a team's manager every season. It's always going to be something new. And you can't really ever tell which way they're going. Even after I listened to the interview of Vinay and Sanyehi, and it's just I still couldn't really tell where they're trying to bring the club. They're just saying all the corporate right things that you say, kind of like interviewing a player. They're just going to say the PC thing and what needs to be said to make fans happy, but there's no real buy-in that I get from anyone at the club.
And I think that comes, all the way from the very, very top.
Yeah.
There's with so many moving pieces and new people coming in, there needs to be somebody at board level, president, like above everybody else. Really, it's got to come down from Kroenke, which we know is not going to happen. That's where it needs to come from. There needs to be a philosophy established from the very top that has everybody on the same page, and clearly nobody is on the same page. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the transfers are like this summer, because, is Emery going to get the players that he wants? Who's the one that's making decisions on the players? Is Emery really even going to be here more than, are they going to move on from him this summer? I don't think this summer. I wouldn't be shocked. he to me is a placeholder. Like you said, and when Alex, I think you said it, that he's never overachieved. That's not the kind of manager that we need here. We need somebody that can get more out of his players. You know, the sum is greater, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, or whatever that cliche saying is, right?
Yeah.
We need a manager that's going to do that if we ever want to compete for a Champions League, compete for a Premier League title. So he seems like he's our David Moyes. He's just here to kind of keep us within striking distance while we turn over the squad until whoever it is that they have in mind to come in and manage the team long term comes free, and they can bring that person in. So I don't know who that is. I don't think there's going to be a change at manager this summer, but it wouldn't shock me one bit.
And if you look at, even when you saw his contract, it was 2 years with the option of a third. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement of a long-term solution. You know, I mean, most managers you see get a 4 or 5 year deal, and yeah, you don't necessarily see that out, but it's kind of a gesture as to how serious you see this as a long-term project. And I think Arsenal are in a weird spot where they're kind of caught between two minds, in that the past season and a half, starting with the purchases of Aubameyang and the transfer that got us Mkhitaryan, it was about getting back into the Champions League. So it meant taking on older players with more experience and, you know, perhaps who have been in the Champions League to try to get us back in there. You know, you signed a Socrates as well on the wrong side of 30. And now you have an aging squad, or at least the core of your squad is quite old. And there's going to be a lot of turnover. But at the same time, you have this kind of younger group coming through that potentially could be really good. But Emery has never shown that he's been the kind of manager to develop a young squad over the course of several seasons and make it into something special. You know, he didn't do what Jardim did at Monaco when he took over an extremely young core and brought them to, you know, to glory and France. He's just not that kind of manager. So, you know, if we're trying to go with the youth movement moving forward, and we can get into that, if we're trying to go with that, then Emery's not the guy. His main goal was to get us into the Champions League, and he had two routes to do it. He didn't. So I'm with you, Ian. I mean, I don't think he'll go this summer, but I don't think he makes it past next summer unless something remarkable happens. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll be honest. Sorry, Zach. I don't mean to jump in over you there. I didn't realize that about his contract. So I was making that point without the knowledge of what his contract structure was. So now it becomes even less surprising to me. Sorry, Zach. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just kind of the same thing. I wasn't aware that it was a 2+1 contract like that. He's always kind of felt like just a fix, like a Band-Aid, like a transitional manager. Because I absolutely agree. He's never really brought any teams drastically forward. Sevilla was always a good team. Yeah, he won the 3 Europa. I'm not taking that away from him. He's a good coach. But, you know, he hasn't really done leaps and bounds. I don't think he'll last past next season unless there's, again, if we win some, you know, silverware, definitely get back into the Champions League. But even if we finish third or fourth, if we have another dismal season, I don't think a Champions League entry keeps him into that third year.
The only thing honestly, for me, the only thing that keeps him around is if we are competing for a Premier League title, which there's no chance of that.
We're miles away from Liverpool and miles away from City.
Yeah, no, we're not competing for it. The only way I see
to Everton than we are to City.
Yeah, the only way I see him lasting to a third season is if we get back into the Champions League and maybe we finish third or something like that. You know, but even that, I'm not necessarily sure because, yeah, that 2+1, that indicates to me that this has never been the long-term solution, which is fine. But then if you're going to hire someone as a stopgap, then you want to make sure that they leave you in a good position. If he leaves next season and we're barely holding on to sixth, and I know people think that's a crazy thought, but it really isn't, because Wolves have financial firepower that almost rivals ours, and especially with their connections with George Mendes, they'll be able to spend money. Leicester got a big influx of cash. Newcastle's being taken over by one of the oil guys. There's got to be a better way to say that, but one of the oil guys.
Tycoon, I believe they go with.
Tycoon. There you go. And Everton as well. And so, and keep in mind, we're losing our best midfielder. We're losing Welbeck. We're going to have to sell some of our big players to create room in the budget. It's not out of the realm of possibility that we're barely holding on to sixth next season. I know Chelsea's got the transfer ban, and United, for some reason, appointed Solskjaer long term. So they're kind of trying to outdo our own incompetence, which I respect, and God bless them for trying.
and on top of that, the exodus at Tottenham is beginning.
Oh, really?
I did see that. Ericsson is indicated
he's ready to move on. He wants a new challenge.
I would love him to take a new challenge too. Yeah. I think it's high time for him to take a new challenge.
The exodus begins. I mean, I think he goes. Dele Alli goes. Is it Alderweireld? However the hell you say his name.
I think he got it.
I mean, their squad's about to lose a lot of players, and they don't have the money to replace anybody like that. I mean, sure, they're going to get some pretty good sums for their guys, and they should be able to reinvest that, but they're not going to be – they're not a draw. People don't
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hate to say it, but they were in the Champions League final.
They were. That's very true, but when you look at a player who's looking to come to England, I mean, if Tottenham's after him, you're telling me that there's not interest from some of the other big clubs?
No, I agree, but
and quite frankly, just especially if Ericsson leaves and if Dele Alli leaves, they're going to look at it. And sure, Tottenham's been competitive and talked up by the media and a hell of a lot better than us the last couple of seasons. But what have they won? Sure, they were in the Champions League final, yeah, but they still haven't won. They haven't won shit.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, it's funny that they only finished 1 or 2 points ahead of us this season.
Right, and there's no. So I think they're not in a whole lot better of a place as we are as far as attracting new talent. I mean, we're still, as a club, we're still a bigger draw. I don't necessarily know that, it's by much. I mean, we're pretty close to them right now.
But that's the thing.
They've had a little bit more success, but they still haven't won anything. So they're going to struggle to replace those guys, even if they do have the money. So,
But the problem is now we're now entering our third season in Europa League, and that does have an effect on your revenue. I mean, the first you can kind of get away with for 1 or 2 seasons, but I think the club is claiming a £60 million loss for this past year because of the lost revenue from the Champions League and Europa League and all that. So it is going to affect your revenue, and it doesn't affect your ability to negotiate commercial deals. It just does. I mean, if your standing as a club is going to continue to take hits, you're not an attractive option to potential sleeve sponsors, things like that. I have not seen our commercial deals. I know a few of them expired recently, so I'd have to see what those were negotiated at. But for 1 or 2 seasons, I think you can survive. Once you start getting into 3 or 4 seasons of that lost revenue, you're kind of fighting an uphill battle. Now, fortunately, Tottenham, they have the stadium, and I assume that is going to influence some of their decision making. Chelsea with the transfer ban is going to be interesting if that's upheld. United are going to spend what they're going to spend. We all know that. So it's kind of those 4 teams, and then maybe 1 or 2 from that other tier kind of competing to get up there. So it's not like we're completely out of it, but because of the revenue issue and the budget that we probably have, and the fact that we've lost so many guys for free that we're not getting any value for. I mean, if you had sold Ramsey and Welbeck at the beginning of last summer, you probably get, I want to say, at least 50 million for the 2 of them combined. For an England international and then a Welsh international, you would easily have gotten that. That could have been reinvested into the squad long term. So, but I mean, because the budget is what it is, let's talk transfers. Let's talk the spots we need to address. And practically speaking, and we all like to hypothetically dream about these superstars we'll sign, but practically speaking, who are some guys you think we should look at, or positions we should look at, and what would constitute a good transfer window for you? I'll start with you, Zach, on that one.
Oh, a good window for me would be Mustafi gone, Kolasinac gone, and Ozil gone. And I think that would generate probably together maybe 50 million if we're lucky. So that puts us to around 90. With 90, I would like to see, a couple of young but almost proven type players brought in, because we need one, if not two, new center backs. We need a squad player at right back. We need a first team left back. We need wingers, actual wingers, and then a new midfielder to replace Mesut Ozil. So the squad is holes all over. I think this may be our single most important summer in the last several years, just because there's so much to do. And I'll tell you one other thing. I mean, don't ever take stock advice for whoever's doing the buying and selling for Arsenal. I mean, we do such terrible business. We lose top players, even if they're past their prime, like Cazorla. We lose top players just for sentiment. Sign Cazorla for another year, then sell him if he wants to go. I mean, it's so embarrassing how bad our business is ran.
It's terrible, man. I'm sure you guys saw the same graphic on Twitter that compared Liverpool's recent business to our recent business.
Yeah.
And that's especially with us not having Champions League, that just puts such a big hit to our revenue streams. But for me this summer, I'm not as concerned about the commercial deals as some others are. I think we still have the fan base around the world and the reputation around the world as, Arsenal Football Club. That is a big time name. Yes, we're not where we should be in the standings, but I don't think our commercial deals are going to be hurt quite yet. So for me, really, the success or failure of this transfer window this summer 100% comes down to who moves out. And obviously we need to bring some good players in, but the entire wage structure of this club needs to be reset. Ozil, he's got to go. Xhaka, I think he should go because I think we can get a good chunk of change for him. And that can help. All these guys that are on crazy high wages, I mean, Welbeck going will be good. Mustafi, Kolasinac, all these okay squad level players that are making what first team players should be making. I mean, look at what Carl Jenkinson's making. He's on what, 45, 50 grand a week. I mean, it's not a ton on the grand scheme of things, but when a player like that is making that kind of money, imagine what that does for the rest of your wage structure, right? So that whole system needs to be reset this summer. I don't know, Zach, you said we need to bring wingers. I really want to see – there's a couple of youth players that I want to see that shot given to. Reece Nelson needs to be given a shot. I believe his name's Saka. Is that right?
Yeah, Bukayo Saka, yeah.
Yes, he needs to be given first team minutes. Maitland-Niles needs to be given first team minutes in an attacking role. Alex Iwobi needs to be consistently on the field starting for this team. We need to see Joe Willock. We need to hopefully Rob Holding gets his knee put back together and can be an impact player for us next season. But we need to see him and Mavropanos. We need to see these early 20s kids that we have at the club. We need to see what they can do. I'm not saying we go 100% youth. I like the idea of keeping Lacazette and Aubameyang up top, but if somebody comes in and offers $80 million for Aubameyang for him to go off to China, I mean, he's 30?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not saying no to that. That's really kind of for me. I want to see those, like you said, Zach, those almost breakout players come in this summer.
The only thing I wouldn't agree there with is Iwobi. I think Iwobi's gotten enough time this season. He hasn't been like a first name on the sheet type starter, but he's gotten enough time this season to, if he was going to develop into what we all want him to be, which is the type of player that consistently scores that goal he scored in the Europa final, behind the box type player, I think he would have by now.
And that's fair. I don't disagree with that. I just think looking at who we currently have, I would rather see him out there than
Mkhitaryan or Ozil.
Mkhitaryan, yeah. I mean,
I agree. Yeah,
that's
it's
kind of
more exciting to watch him. He tries harder.
He just has the worst technique shooting a ball that I've ever seen a professional have. I don't think the dude knows how to lock his ankle when he strikes a ball.
I think he would be a really good center midfielder if he would have came up as a center midfielder with his build. But since he came up as a forward player, he's got all the other techniques down great. He can beat a guy. He's got pace. He's strong. Now he's got dread, so of course he's an attacker. But you're right. Once it comes to shooting the ball, I mean, if it's falling to anybody on our team, I'd rather it fall to Koscielny than Iwobi. I think Koscielny's probably got more goals than Iwobi.
I can't disagree with that. It's crazy, But it's I don't know. I mean, I think, like I said, and it's just, I don't know. It sounds kind of defeatist that I don't really care who we bring in this summer, but I don't want Emery anywhere in the conversation about the players we bring in. Because like I said, he's not going to be here. So clear out the overpaid late 20s, early 30s players. Get some early 20s, mid 20s guys in on mid-level wages. Give some of your young kids a chance. And let's see where we can go from there.
The brand that is Arsenal that's like a 5 to 8 year plan, though. Do you think
I don't think it's that long of a plan, though.
No?
No, I mean, I think we have. I mean, look, it's a lot of turnover. I mean, there's no way they're going to turn over that many players in one summer. I mean, that's you just can't do that. I mean, it's not FIFA, right?
Right.
It's not FIFA where you can put everybody up for sale and you can sell them all, and you're ended up with just a whole bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds. I mean, you can't do that. Trust me. I get that, but I just those players have to go. There's really no way around it. We should have shipped more of them out last summer.
Yeah, it comes back to you sell Welbeck last season. Even just Welbeck, you could have probably gotten 15 to 20 million for him.
And I think it's just more of the wage structure, honestly.
It is to some extent, but it is also what you said that, we're all listing these names of guys that we think should go, and realistically, maybe 5 will go this summer. We're just realistically speaking. I know we all think, oh man, Emery's going to clear out the squad, but I'm just going to go down the list of players that I would be perfectly okay seeing go. First of all, you're already losing Czech, Ramsey, Welbeck. I don't know about Jenkinson. I think his contract expires, but there's kind of mixed reports on that. I would love to see Kolasinac go. Monreal is on the wrong side of thirdly decreasing in pace, but I don't think I think he'll probably stick around. El Neni has to go. Mkhitaryan, I would love to get those wages off the books, but who can afford to take him? That's the other issue. Mustafi, same thing. I'd love to get him off the books, but who can afford those wages? Who's going to pay for a bad central defender on high wages? Ozil, who's going to take $350,000 a week unless we subsidize those wages? And that's very uncommon in transfer business. Lichtsteiner is gone, so we do need a backup right back. And then, if you get a big offer for an Aubameyang or Lacazette, I think you have to consider it. But the point is, we've all listed all these different players. Koscielny might retire, or there's rumors about him possibly going back to France or going to Germany. So, we've listed 8 or 9 different players there, and there's realistically no way that all of those guys leave. So, for me,
I hope they do, though.
We all hope they do, but I don't think they're going to. I just don't think it's practical to overhaul basically a third of your squad in one summer. In terms of positions I would look to address, I think central midfield just became infinitely more important with both, with Ramsey gone and Ozil just not coming back or just being kind of the shell of the player he was. In an ideal world, Van de Beek from Ajax would be the guy, but I don't think you can attract a guy like that without Champions League. There were some rumors about some central midfielders from Argentina that we were looking at. I can't say I'm too familiar. Actually, one of the interesting rumors I heard was from Sampdoria, where Lucas Torreira came from, the Danish center back, Joachim Andersen, and then a central midfielder, Dennis Pratt. And the only reason I put some stock into that is because we have that relationship with Sampdoria. So those are guys that I don't think would necessarily hinge on Champions League. I think that might be business we can do. I know there was rumors about Umtiti. I mean, put that out of your mind. That's not happening. He has no reason to come to Arsenal at this point. There was a young French center back, Saliba, that we were linked to. I mean, the other rumor that is not going away is this Ryan Fraser rumor. I mean, all the different sources are saying he's a legitimate option for us. I don't know how I feel. Well, I do know how I feel about it. I don't like it. But maybe that's just the bin that we're shopping in right now. And I forgot to talk about Xhaka because, yeah, like you said, Ian, he's one that probably needs to go as well. And he's probably the one guy in the squad that gets you decent resale value in his mid-20s. There were rumors about Inter. No, not the rumors by his made-up cousin today on Twitter, but actual rumors about Inter being interested. So that's something to keep an eye on. But it is like you said, we're going to have to kind of accept that this is going to be a gradual process. I mean, I like the signing of the Brazilian kid, Martinelli, that should go public later this month. But at the same time, you can't go full youth. You do have to supplement that with some experience and some proven players. I would like to see the Europa League used primarily as a vessel for the young kids, though. I mean, all the guys that you mentioned, Saka, Smith Rowe, if he's not back on loan, Mavropanos, I'd be okay loaning out if we sign 2 center backs. Nelson, Nketiah, all those guys. So there's just so much turnover that needs to happen. I'm just not confident we can do it all at once.
No, you're right. There's no way. There's no way that it all gets done at once. But that's kind of like what's going to be interesting for me is what kind of direction the club does decide to go with this summer.
And it is like you said too, because if Emery's not the long-term guy, he shouldn't. I mean, really, realistically speaking, he shouldn't have much input on transfers anyways. But especially with Edu coming in, if there is a long-term vision, they need to be looking towards that. I mean, the Torreira Guendouzi signings are what I want to see. Guys that are just like you said, just on the cusp of breaking out. Torreira had a pretty good season. He kind of faded towards the end, but that's kind of the market I want to see us enter.
I mean, do we think Guendouzi had a good season? I mean, he had a good run of games at the beginning, but
it's like the rest of our squad, right? They showed some flashes early on, and just after Christmas, really, after the turn of the new year, there was really just nothing. It was lifeless.
But I will say, I mean, he came in at 19 from this French second division, and he played over 2,000 Premier League minutes. And if you look at his radar numbers, they're all really good. I mean, I don't think it was his fault. He was overplayed, though. I think he kind of faded from fatigue at some point.
What is he though? I mean, he's not an attacking mid. He's not a defensive midfielder. He's not a particularly amazing passer, like splitting the lines. He's not a finisher of any sort like Ramsey is. I mean, what exactly is he other than someone that runs around a lot and can short pass very well? He's got great touch, great short passer, but other than that, what else does he do?
I mean, he's 19 though. That's the thing. I mean, again, we're judging him. We shouldn't be judging him on the same criteria we judge Granit Xhaka, for example. I think with him, at least the physical upside also, I think is significant. I think once he puts on a little bit of muscle to kind of be able to compete in those duels in central midfield, because right now he has this tendency to feel contact and just fall down and then hope that the referee calls something. I think if he coaches that out of his game, I think he's got the ability to hit long range passes. But maybe he becomes a deep lying playmaker down the field, or even a pure defensive mid, though I think with Torreira, that's probably not the case. But I just think, I mean, a guy like that is the least of our concerns. Let's be honest. I mean, there's so many flawed players in the squad right now that at least a guy like that, even if he doesn't necessarily pan out to be a star, has massive resale value in 2 or 3 seasons.
Why do the both of you want to see Xhaka gone so badly? I rate him. I think he's still all right.
I never have. I've never been a big fan of him. I think his lack of mobility really hurts him. I think that he has the ability to pick out some really, really nice passes, but at the same time, I think he's very predictable in what he does. I think he's a liability defensively. I don't know. I think he's okay. Like I don't not rate him. I don't think he's a terrible player. I just and I wouldn't mind having him in the squad. I don't think he's somebody that we can count on to be, one of the first names on the team sheet like we do. And quite frankly, I think what we can get for him, the 35 million or whatever it's going to be, if we can get a good chunk of money, then I think it's worth it. It's not. I don't have to see him gone, but like Alex said, he's one of the very few players in our squad that is of the right age, is not on crazy high wages, and is still a good player that we can actually get money for.
And here's my thing, and Ian can vouch for this because he knows I've been a staunch Xhaka defender for
before he was even on our team. You're talking about
exactly. I was raving about him because I always pictured him kind of being the Xabi Alonso of our squad. A defensive midfielder who could spray passes. And Xabi Alonso was never the most athletic or the quickest player, but he just had this innate sense of positioning and where to be, what pass to play. Xhaka has not developed that sense of positioning, and he is 26 at this point. It's just painfully obvious he's not going to. Now, in games when teams sit back, he can absolutely dominate the game by spraying passes. He can play 100, 150 passes a game. That's never been the issue. But anytime he's pressed, like Ian said, he's so immobile that his physical flaws are completely exposed. If you press him at all, he's so one-footed, his change of direction is incredibly limited that he turns the ball over in terrible spots, and his decision-making is just mind-boggling. I can't even say the word. It's incredibly stupid at times. I mean, if you need an example, please go watch what he did today against Portugal. Just a simple pass in midfield, completely gives it away. Then not only does he give it away, he doesn't track back, and Portugal scores 10 seconds later. It was just a basic pass, and you've seen that happen too often. And I mean, again, I love his passing range. I love his ability to play through the lines, but his flaws are starting to overshadow his strengths. And I would point to the Brighton game. Remember the penalty he gave away where the Brighton player was in the box and basically Xhaka just tugged his shoulder and pulled him back and he went down, and we ended up drawing that game. I mean, Brighton had created nothing all game, and he went and made that mistake, and that ultimately cost us at least 2 points and potentially Champions League qualification. So I just think in a league like Serie A where you get more time on the ball, I think that he would really thrive. But I think in the Premier League, where the pace and the physicality is so intense, I think his flaws really kind of come to the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying with that. The more I think about it, the more I tend to agree. I just, I guess I still have that inner hope that, he does learn that little bit of positioning that we all want him to. Because I love the positives of his games. That's just, I don't know. It's my favorite way of center midfield play is the positives of Xhaka's game, the passing ability all over the field. But you're absolutely right. He's got so many flaws, so many holes.
And to your point, like, and Ian, you mentioned that play early in the Europa League where he played that ball for, played in Kolasinac, who should have squared the ball, but not many players can play that pass that he played to Kolasinac. So he has these moments where you're like, wow, just an incredible pass, or, the vision. And then he he picks up these silly yellow cards when he doesn't need to. He lunges in when he doesn't need to, and he's caught out of position. So it is one of those things where he's not at the top of my list of players that needs to go, but I just think with the value he commands, there's a strong argument to be made for it. And because we just renewed his contract last summer, we protected his resale value so we can get a good chunk of money for him, actually. I mean, even with all those flaws, because I do think, especially Italian teams, you tend to see them come in for players that maybe struggle a little bit in England and kind of, see that as a chance to revitalize these guys. So, yeah, I could definitely see that happening. But I know we kind of want to wrap up soon. It's a late night for all of us. So I just want to transition to kind of superlatives of the season, best and worst. So I want to start with your best, most positive memory of the season, most positive game, I should say, or moment in the season. Ian, I'll start with you on that one. It's hard because there haven't been many recently.
Really the positive. I'm struggling, man. Like, I really don't have a ton. I think I mentioned it before that I think Leno he looks the part. I'm comfortable in saying that he's going to be our guy back there for the next 6-7 years. I think he's going to be very good. So I'm good with that. That's definitely a positive to take out of it. The partnership between Lacazette and Aubameyang is a positive, but I think I probably said it early on, either before the season or early on in this season on one of the podcasts, that I really looking for that next young player to break through for us. We didn't have that this year. So that's really, that would be something that I would come through as a positive. So unfortunately, no, that's really all I got on the positive side of things. I don't really have a game that sticks out as, because sure, even if we did have a good game, we didn't do anything with it. We squandered it the next week or the next 5 weeks straight. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, really it comes down to Leno. I think that he established himself as, as our guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the same. I almost wish, we would have said damn the sentiment and played him in the final. I think Leno has earned his spot 100%. I mean, for me, in terms of positives, if there's a moment, it's the football we were playing around the time of that goal of the season that came out with Mesut Ozil outside the foot, cross it to an open net, Aubameyang. Just the football we were playing at that point in the season was about the only positive. And that play would probably be my positive moment of the season. But for player, Lacazette and Aubameyang did everything they could, as standalone strikers to drag us along. So I've got no fault there. Barring Leno and semi-positive Socrates, I like the hunger that he brings. He's not incredibly talented as a defender like a Van Dijk or something like that, but he brings a certain strength, a certain intensity, and a certain grind. Like he's willing to play the dirty parts. So I like that part of the game being brought back to the defense, because I mean you have to have, every team's got that guy. You got one guy has to have a little bit of dirtiness, a little bit of gamesmanship to his game, and Liechtensteiner has it, Socrates has it. I mean, maybe it comes with age, but that'd be the only positives I'd say. The season as a whole was not much more than a dumpster fire.
Yeah, for me, the positive moment was Tottenham at home, that second half where, I think we were down, what were we down? We were down 2-1, and then we came back to win that game 4-2. Especially the moment when Torreira scored the goal to make it 4-2. I think that was the most excitement I had all season, when he ripped off his shirt and, there's a big celebration in the corner. That was definitely the moment where, if at that point it felt like maybe we turned a corner, but then, really didn't end up going anywhere. In terms of best players, yeah, I can't disagree with you guys. I think Leno, there were concerns about his abilities coming over from Leverkusen because he didn't have a great season last season. But, his distribution, his shot stopping ability, his reflexes, I got nothing negative to say there. Lacazette and Aubameyang, for different reasons, were really impressive. Aubameyang, anytime he scored 30 goals, that's, it's a hell of a season. And then Lacazette improving his overall play, not just being a finisher, but also being the link-up guy, and being a guy that can, support his teammates. I think that was impressive. but with those limited positives, there's a lot of negatives. So your worst, we'll start with your worst game of the season and your worst player of the season. And I'll start because I've had these ready to go for a long time. And there's only one word to describe worst player of the season, and it's Mustafi. I mean, I don't even think I need to explain that. I will never forget what he did against Crystal Palace, where he was conceivably responsible for all 3 goals in a game that completely turned our Champions League fortune. But the game that's going to haunt me all summer is the home draw to Brighton. If you can't get 3 points at home to Brighton, and you give away a cheap penalty at the end to get to draw that game, that's the one that the squad is probably going to look back on. And I've said it on Twitter, so we played Brighton twice this season. We got 2 points out of those games. We played Palace twice this season. We got 1 point out of those 2 games. 1 out of 6 and 2 out of 6 against those teams. If you want to look at why I didn't make Champions League, you can point to that right there. So I would point to that Brighton game as just the low point of the season where I realized, we're probably going to blow this. Zach, what about you?
My low point of the season was losing to Bate Borisov. There's no conceivable reason that we should be losing to a team like that. I mean, all respect to Borisov or Bate, they're professionals in their own league and their own level. I mean, they're a very strong team, and they showed us, where they belonged that night. But realistically, there's no Arsenal team that should be losing that game, and I think that is just a marker of our entire season. I mean, I could quote all the, end of the season capitulation games that we lost, but that type of mentality that was that night, in Bate is just, that to me describes the entire season. And as for player, I mean, what's the least we would take for Mustafi right now? I mean, 5 million.
I would take a pack of Skittles, honestly.
I mean, if somebody's willing to offer us a washing machine, like, get him out.
If I never see another back on top for the rest of my life, I swear to God, I would be beyond happy. That's all I want for Christmas. 7 months in advance. Ian, what about you though? Worst performance and worst player. I mean, and again, I don't want it to seem like we're piling on Mustafi, but we're piling on Mustafi. So
he let's be real, he deserves it.
That's the thing. It's not like I want to hate on him, but
no, he seems like a good dude. He seems likable, but yeah,
so bad.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell he's doing, man. Most disappointing. It's not a single game. I'm going to go with a stretch of games. I don't know the exact numbers on how many points we took out of how many games, but all those losses and draws coming down the stretch where if we win 2 of those games, we're not having this conversation.
It's 4 out of 18, in case you wanted to know.
See, there we go. And not even against that difficult of opponents, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah, that's how far we've dropped.
It's crazy, and I've never, ever since I became an Arsenal fan, I've never felt this disillusioned or we lose a game and I'm like, okay, like great, we lost, typical, like not surprised. And it kind of struck me at one point in time where I was like, I think it might have been the Brighton game where I didn't even get mad. Just kind of sat there and was like, well, that makes sense. That's where we're at right now. And the fact that I didn't get mad, it's not one particular game. It's like not really even that stretch of games. It's just the entire season has kind of, with everything that's going on in life for me right now, it's a matter of I need to make time to sit down and watch these games. And the performances of this team throughout the season has put me to the point where I'm choosing to do other things with my time. And then when we lose, I'm just kind of like, whatever. So that for me is the biggest disappointment. It's not, like I said, it's not one game. That stretch at the end really epitomizes it. And as far as the I don't want to say the worst player, the worst performance of the season, but the most disappointing I'm going to go with, because you guys have been all over Mustafi, and it's hard to argue that as far as being our worst player. But the most disappointing, performance season-wide, Mesut Ozil for me, without a doubt. And again, I don't think that needs a whole lot of explanation. And we said it before, he had, 2, maybe 3 assists this year. And when he was on the field, he was almost always invisible, almost always seemingly uninterested, and I've been one of his bigger supporters. So, yeah, most disappointing player of the season, definitely him for me.
Well, I got one last question for us. What's our most disappointing signing of the season? It's clearly Dennis Suarez.
I forgot about him.
I honestly forgot he came to Arsenal
at all. He played a total of 4 games as a sub, totaling 67 minutes.
Didn't
zero any stats.
I saw a report that he wanted to stay. I don't know if it was true, but I laughed when I saw it.
And of course he did. He sat here for half a season, did nothing, got paid for it. That's my dream.
I don't know though if Dennis Suarez is actually good or not.
He's not.
I can't.
I'll save you the time.
I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. There's a lot of people that wash out of Barcelona. He came through the academy there, if I'm wrong, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Or maybe he came through Villarreal. But yeah, he spent a lot of time at Barcelona, yeah.
I mean, you want to think that he's got something there that Barcelona saw in him. So, we weren't there watching practice every day, but it's just weird to see that he was always on the bench but never getting time. Like, what was even the point of that in the transfer window at all? 67 minutes?
Yeah, and then he had that groin injury and he missed like 3 months. It's frustrating because you saw Leicester get a guy like Yuri Telemans in midfield on loan. So, they got him on loan and now they're trying to buy him permanently, but they got him on loan. And look at the difference he made. He bossed the game when Leicester played against
so
them.
Disappointed when they got him.
Because I think Ian, you and I have talked about him before. Like, we both agreed that he had massive upside. He's still so young.
The exact kind of player we need to be after.
Exactly. And so, it was striking to see that contrast. And I get you can't help if you get injured, but even when he played, he was nothing special. So yeah, I would definitely say he was the most disappointing signing. I see a lot of people upset about the Lichtsteiner signing. I don't get it. He was only here for a season. We needed some cover for Bellerin. We didn't know how he would adapt, but he was a player that was really good at Juventus. You took a shot at him for 1 season, it didn't work out.
He was on a free, whatever.
Yeah, he was fine. He did nothing special. And, I'm sure just having him around the locker room was probably a good thing for guys like Bellerin, Maitland-Niles. So I won't call Lichtsteiner a disappointing signing. I'll just say, it kind of panned out like we all thought it would. He was a 34-year-old right back in his first Premier League season. I don't know why we thought he was going to become Maicon all of a sudden,
Yeah.
But I know we got to wrap up, so I guess we'll just wrap up with one last question. Is there anything you're looking forward to for next season? And obviously we'll get into transfers later throughout the summer, and we'll keep you posted on that. But just kind of one thing you're like, hey, at least this might be exciting for next season. Ian, I'll start with you on that one.
I am excited. I'm not getting to next season yet. I'm going to take it, a little bit at a time here. I am excited to watch Arsenal Twitter melt down over every single player that we're linked with this summer. And I'm just going to sit back and laugh because it's so much fun. Just watching people get worked up, talking about how they don't want to sign some guy that's we're never even going to get. So That's what I'm excited for.
Those are always fun. Arsenal's linked with Karim Benzema again.
Every single player that comes available. I saw a Kylian Mbappe linked to Arsenal article 2 weeks ago.
I mean, if only.
I mean, maybe his twin brother Kevin or something, but
Yeah.
I would
yeah.
take Willie Z though. I'd take Wilfred Zaha.
The
Not
problem is,
40 million.
oh, it'll take way more than 40 million. They were talking about 60 or 70.
Oh, get
What?
out of here. Yeah, no.
That
How
was-
about 25 tops?
And that's the thing, for a guy like that, you're paying the English premium on him too. It's just,
Are you though? He doesn't even play for the English team.
I know, but having come through the Premier League, I should have specified the
Does
Premier
he
League.
qualify?
Right.
The Premier League premium, any guys who have played in the Premier League just automatically have their value increase. I mean, Harry Maguire is being rumored for like 60 or 70 million, and no one thinks he's that good, let's be honest. But so it's going to be one of those things where Sanier, he said we have to outsmart the market. I'm really curious to see what he means. I'll end with this. Do you think we have a signing by the end of this month?
No.
Not officially, because they can't officially announce it until July 1st, right?
Well, I mean, they can.
can they?
Let's be honest.
They can. They just can't sign the contract.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Madrid's already announced Luka Jovic, haven't they?
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Madrid announced Jovic today, Hazard tomorrow, and Ferland Mendy soon after.
Okay. No, I don't think we will.
Okay.
All
Well,
that answer.
Well, on that uplifting note, I'm gonna wrap things up, but I'll throw it to you guys.
You guys try that again, man. You just glitched out.
He's gone.
You there? There you go. Try that again, man. You just went all robo glitch.
You can reach us at Get a Better Microphone.
Yeah. No, I was like,
Upgrade your Wi-Fi.
I was like, Ian, what's your Twitter handle for the people?
Gunners at GunnersFan6. That sounds right. I don't look at my own Twitter handle very often. Yeah, at GunnersFan6. Sorry.
And Zach, what about you?
At ZM Taylor 13.
Yeah, and you can find me at UFGoonerAJ. You can find the podcast at Eurosnob Pod. Facebook.com/Eurosnob Pod. Find us on iTunes, subscribe there, or find us on Podomatic. Basically, do whatever you got to do. Drop us some reviews because it's good for my self-esteem. Unless the reviews suck, then don't do it.
Drop it anyways because it says that you're listening.
Yeah, at least
this far through it, if you're still listening, ask us
honestly,
episode.
honestly, if you're still listening at this point, hi mom.
Mom hasn't listened for 2 years, man. She gave up on that a long time ago after like episode 4. She's like, nah, I'm done with this shit.
Man, my mom still listens. I don't know. I don't even think my wife.
I think she's still set on auto download, so we at least get the download.
Yeah.
Hey guys, since we're on such a positive note, I want to close this out. U.S. national team lost to Jamaica today, so that's fun.
Oh God. Well, and that's so.
I'm
not getting into that. We're not getting into that. We'll be here for another 45 minutes, but I just wanted to say that,
No, definitely around the Gold Cup time, I think we'll do another episode and see if there's anything good to talk about with that. Probably not, because
probably Pulisic is not playing.
It's just going to be an us sit around and bitch session, which will be fun. So.
Well, I mean, after we missed the World Cup, that was our most listened to episode. So maybe that's it.
Man. We're fired up. All right, let's get out of here, man. Let's close this thing down.
All right, everyone, have a good night.
All right.
Bye.